Sanjay, what the government should do and what the government will do are two very different things, as you know, in India. For India, many times, that this is the country that consistently disappoints the optimists and the pessimists. In dollar terms, Sanjay, the Indian stock market today is still lower than where it was in 2007.
Ten Rules of Successful Nations. It is very contemporary book. I think he started writing it earlier, but then we found ourselves in pandemic. So it covers the post-pandemic likely scenarios also. Is that right, Ruchir?
Yes, absolutely. I think that what I've done in this book, Sanjay, is that I presented the 10 rules, but I think there are 4 rules in particular which become even more relevant in the post-pandemic world. And those 4 rules have to do with what you can in a way call the 4 Ds, which is to do with deglobalization, digitization, debt, and also the deftness of the state, that how deft is the state in handling such a crisis response.
So Indian policy makers, they make all right noises in terms of free market, capital flows, etc. But where do you put Indian system? Are we statist, socialist, or are we free market capitalists?
No, I think as far as the Indian political class is concerned, I think socialism and statism run very deep. In fact, one distinctive feature about India, I would say, is that there is no real serious right-wing party in India from an economic perspective. Because even if you look at the BJP, it is right-wing in a cultural way. It is right-wing in terms of its, stance towards many of the social issues, the social issues. But when it comes to things like economics, I don't think that you can. It's not a free market party in the sense that the parties in the West typically are, that you embrace free markets, because even Prime Minister Modi has a great belief in what the government can do. It's, I think, still a very statist approach towards managing the economy.
You say good leaders try to rally people around him, and the USP should be the reform. That should be the prerequisite. How is it playing out in India?
I think it's playing out very differently. That, when Prime Minister Modi first came to power, I think there was a lot of hope in that slogan of maximum
governance and minimum government.
Exactly. So, that was the slogan which was rolling off our lips, which sort of even gave hope that maybe he'd be a Reagan Thatcher kind of reformer. But I think since then, when things have played out, it's been very much a government controlled kind of approach that has played out. So, and I think this is not just true of him. I think it's true of many chief ministers as well. And I saw that during this lockdown as well, that the tendency to control, the tendency to, to whip out orders and treat people as subjects, I think that's true among many of the local supremos as well, and not just at the center, even though we focus so much at just the center.
The other very interesting insight I find in your book is about the difference between first term of a political leader and the second term. What do you, please explain and elaborate it for us.
Yeah, so the research that I've done in this book, Sanjay, basically shows that the longer a leader stays in power, the diminishing returns you have to power. What do I mean by this? If you just look at the stock market performance as a reflector of economic performance, we find that in the first term, a leader is able to generate much higher returns, especially compared to other countries, compared to what the same leader does in the second term. And this is true in the United States, and it's true in many emerging markets. So what that tells you is that when a leader first comes to power, there's possibly more energy, much greater will to do reforms. And the longer he or she stays in power, the less is the inclination to reform and the more the inclination to settle for status quo.
All your 10 rules are very, very fascinating, but I am most fascinated by, I find this chapter most intense is on the inequality, the concentration of wealth, and the difference between good billionaire and bad billionaire. Please elaborate on that.
Right. The point that I make here, Sanjay, is this. I think it's very important to know that when a country is creating wealth and the wealth creators in that nation, how are they perceived? Because what I've seen repeatedly in my travels across emerging markets from Russia to Mexico is that when the attitude towards wealth creation turns negative, that can be terrible for a country because then it means that the political leaders will go after the wealth creators. The conditions are not there for new wealth creation to emerge, and the country can slip into some sort of deep level of socialism. So I created this concept of good and bad billionaires, that in a country, when you have a lot of good billionaires which are coming up, that is typically positive for economic growth. And when you have a lot of bad billionaires who come up, I feel that that creates a negative sentiment towards wealth creation. And we define broadly what are good and bad billionaires. These are broad terms. The good billionaires are billionaires coming in industries where wealth creation has been done on its own through innovation, through manufacturing. And bad billionaires are in industries which are so-called rent-seeking industries, like commodities or maybe even like real estate, where you really need government help to try and grow. So that is the broad mix.
So going by your analysis, there are now fewer companies to invest. Other companies who are minting money are not available for investment to lay investors, average investors like us. So, and we are also losing incomes. So how should an average investor, be the guy in New York or Bombay, how should he conduct himself?
No, I think that the good news is that many of these emerging markets, such as India today, have been badly beaten down and are cheap. In dollar terms, Sanjay, the Indian stock market today is still lower than where it was in 2007. Even in local inflation adjusted terms, the Indian stock market is lower today than when it was in 2007-8, the peak we hit there. So there are a lot of cheap companies available out there. We just have to, be more wide-eyed about this, about where those opportunities are. But the good news is that after a decade, which has been a washout for emerging markets, including in India, at least in inflation adjusted terms, there are opportunities available and we need to scar those opportunities. It's just that my disappointment is that as far as India is concerned, compared to other emerging markets, the opportunity set of the number of companies available to invest has shrunk compared to what it used to be 5, 10, or even 15 years ago.
Okay, I wanted to bring the topic of Trump. So what do you think will happen on 3rd November?
Sanjay, we spoke about the Indian elections. I told you back then that even then I had no idea that Modi would win, such a landslide. So I don't and that's a country I think I know better. So for me to try and predict what's going to happen here in India, I think is even more difficult. Like in the US is more difficult. I'd say that the betting markets today suggest that Biden has the edge, and the betting market is what I consider to be most reliable. So I would still say that I would back, like in terms of the betting market seems to suggest Biden has the edge, but not by that much. But that is what is my best guess.
As far as I know, you have not missed any Indian elections in last few years. You have always done your limousine liberal Padyatra. So this time you are missing Bihar?
I think that, it's a very strange election, but I think that we are watching the US election here closely around the same dates. You have a much better idea what happens in Bihar. The arithmetic there seems to suggest as if it's a relatively one-sided contest is how the arithmetic sort of shows up. But I will be back for sure for the Bengal election next year. That seems to be setting up as a real cracker compared to what we have now.
I got your prediction on Bihar also. Great.
Ruchir, I have no prediction. I'm just sort of saying that that's the consensus, I think.
I know. Thank you so much for your time, Ruchir.